All right. Well, welcome. So, the topic that I wanted to discuss with you guys tonight is it's as you can see in this drawing, this is a tree that is planted by the river of water. Please forgive the crudeness of my drawing, but there's several verses in several different parts of the Bible that talk about this concept of being like a tree planted by the rivers of water. So we've often talked about the importance of abiding in Him and staying in the presence of God and maintaining a relationship with God, maintaining an awareness of God throughout the day, throughout the different things that we're doing. And so I want to draw your attention to a couple of verses that talk about this concept of being like a tree planted by the river and why that is so important and why that is something that we should strive for. So we can start with Psalms chapter 1. And I'm just going to grab the Bible here and we'll read it straight from the good book. Now, I don't know what translation you guys use, but I've really been digging into the New International Version lately, and I've been liking it a lot. But for tonight, we're going to go to the Amplified Version. So Psalms 1 is a great chapter to read through. It's super simple. When we were growing up, um, our dad made us memorize it because it's only 6 verses and it's super short, but it's so powerful, so impactful. And when we were memorizing it, I didn't really know what it meant, and it didn't really have much meaning to me at the time because I was very young. But let me read it for you. So, blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth fruit in his season, and his leaf also shall not wither. Whatever he does shall prosper. That's actually the King James Version, but there's a couple of things that I want to call your attention to in this particular chapter. So something side topic that I've been meditating on is seasons. There's constantly a changing of the seasons. At the end of last year, there was a changing of the season of the calendar year. And then at the end of February, there's going to be a physical changing of like the season from winter into springtime. So there's all these different seasons. There's seasons of famine, and then there's seasons of abundance and overflow. So there's so many different seasons in our lives. There might be a season where you're having a difficult time in your relationship, for example, or maybe not your relationship with your significant other, but maybe your relationship with your children, maybe your relationship with a friend or a coworker, an employee, a customer, whatever it is. So there's seasons to everything. And so this verse is talking about being able to bring forth fruit in season and out of season. So when you're sowing seed, there's a season of reaping and there's a season of sowing. And think about this tree. So this tree that's planted by the rivers of water, he's not fazed by whether or not it rains. That's something that is a concept about sowing and reaping, is that, if the clouds are full of rain, they empty themselves. Well, what if the clouds aren't full of rain? Well, if you're like that tree that's planted by the rivers of water, it doesn't really matter what's going on in the world around you because you are still hooked into the source. You'll notice, and I think you can see it in the drawing here, that the roots go down into the river. Now, something that you may not know about trees, but if you see like the head of the tree above the ground, you can usually go underneath of the ground, and the roots of the tree go equally as far out and deep as the top of the tree does. So those roots are spread out underneath of the river so that they're constantly getting the nutrients that they need from the river. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about God, and the presence of God is like that river. So we need to be constantly drawing from the river that is God's presence, that is God's word, because God gives us his direction through his word, through prayer, through meditation, through worship. God continues to bless us and sustain us in season and out of season. So we'll go back to the verse for a minute. It says, you'll be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, and you'll bring forth fruit in season, and his leaf shall also not wither, but whatever he does will prosper. So if you want everything that you do to prosper, stay connected to the river. Make sure that you're planted by the river. Now, if this same tree was planted like 100 yards or 100 miles inland, or insert distance inland, it would not be able to have the same benefit as staying true and staying close to the river. So we have to stay close to the source, and it's going to allow us to be able to weather the different storms. The famines, the droughts and things, they're not going to affect this tree because he's by the river. So we need to be like that tree. Now let's look at Jeremiah chapter 17. And we're not going to go super long because I want to get with you guys too and share some of your guys' thoughts on this topic. But we'll start in verse 7 and we'll read through verse 8. It says, "Blessed with spiritual security is the man who believes and trusts in and relies on the Lord, whose hope and confident expectation is the Lord. For he will be nourished like a tree planted by the waters that spreads out its roots by the river, and he will not fear heat when it comes, but its leaves will be green and moist, and it will not be anxious or concerned in the year of drought, nor will it stop bearing fruit." So reiterating a similar point with a couple of little extra things added in there. So a way to be like that tree is to be confident and believing and trusting, relying on the Lord, not relying on ourselves. Notice it doesn't say blessed with spiritual security. Blessed is the man who believes and trusts and relies on himself. Like, that's not how it works. We need to be trusting in God. We need to be submitting ourselves under him constantly, continually. And so that's how we're going to stay nourished, is by submitting ourselves under God and staying plugged into him, more so than being plugged into ourselves and our own, stupid agendas, we'll call them. So great verse. Love this verse a lot. I want to talk about another one here, and we'll do John chapter 15, which is, you guys know this one. We've been talking about this the last couple of months, but I think it bears repeating. So we'll go into John chapter 15, and it says, "Abide in me and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself except it abides in the vine. No more can you except you abide in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. He that abides in me, the same bringeth forth much fruit. Without me you can do nothing." So if you think about one of these branches on the tree, if it got broken off and it fell on the ground, it's dead. It's not coming back to life. There's nothing that can be done with that branch. And that is the same thing that happens to us if we fall off, if we stop being connected to God, if we stop drawing from God, if we release ourselves from the vine. So what does that look like in daily life? Well, if you are just going to church on Sunday, but you're not praying and you're not getting into the word and you're not exercising your relationship with God on a daily basis, then you are being separated from that vine. So you're not going to be able to get nourished. Just like this tree that's by the river. If this tree gets separated from the river, it's not going to be able to get those nutrients and stuff. Now, there's going to be nutrients that may come, but he's dependent on whether or not it rains, et cetera, et cetera. So that's not how we want to be. We want to be in charge of our nourishment and take charge of our nourishment, take responsibility for our nourishment by putting ourselves by the river, by staying in the vine. So we need to be constantly staying in the vine. And that is a challenge for us because we have so many things that are going on. And something that I like to think about is, like, every minute that we're out of church or we're out of our private time with God, then the devil's coming after us. Every time that we step away, go back into the world, it's not anything that's intentional, but it's just the devil comes after us once we get separated away from that vine. So I want to encourage you guys to spend as much time as you can and to be very thoughtful and mindful about how much time you're spending in your relationship with God, and try to balance the scales or imbalance the scales in favor of spending more time in the presence of God and spending more time in worship and spending more time in prayer, spending more time in the thing like making God a priority as opposed to making ourselves a priority. Because what I found is that when you seek God first, then everything else comes added to you. And when you seek God first, everything else, He moves everything else around so that you're not going to miss the time that you spend in the Word of God. You're not going to miss the time that you spend in prayer. You're not going to miss the time that you spend in worship. Furthermore, you're actually going to be built up, encouraged, strengthened, empowered by that time that you spend. So it's going to enable you to be able to go further and faster than you would if you just jumped right into the things that you were doing and God was almost an afterthought. So don't let God be an afterthought. I'll write this verse down for you, which is John 15. And we were going through from 4 to about 7. I'll read verse 7 for you. It says, "If you abide in me and my words abide in you, then you can ask what you will and it will be done." So I have a couple of other verses here for you guys, um, but I'm not going to get too much into it here. I just wanted to reiterate a couple of things. And this is kind of almost a separate topic, but it says that in Isaiah 26:3, we all know this one, He will keep in perfect peace those whose mind is stayed on Him. Um, so keeping your mind stayed on Him is how you stay in peace. If you don't feel peace, get into the presence of God. Get your mind right. Get your mind focused on God. Start making God a priority. Start listening to people preaching on YouTube again. Start listening to worship songs in the background while you're working. You have no idea how impactful it is to keep your mind stayed on Him. And it's so funny because the algo on my YouTube page, every time I open the YouTube app, it wants to play this one song. It's a Michael W. Smith song called Majesty. Every single time I open it, that's the first song that's on there because that's what I've been listening to. So I'll listen to that song probably 50 times a day. And every single time I open my app, Majesty right there, boom, hit it. And I'll listen to it. It doesn't matter if I'm at the gym or if I'm at Chipotle or if I'm in the car or if I'm at my desk trying to do some work. Majesty, Majesty. And so I'm filling myself with worship and keeping my mind stayed on Him. And guys, I have to say, I live a peaceful life. Like, even though I live a very chaotic life, you would think, because there's always these 1,001 things that are going wrong, but I'm able to maintain that peace. And it's such a weapon. Um, I'll give you Psalms 37:11 too, which is, well, let me turn and just read it off to you because you guys are going to love this one. And this one, I think, really perfectly sums up what we're talking about today. We're in Psalms 37, and Psalms 37 is a good read if you guys ever have a chance to just dig into it. But it says, "But the humble will at last inherit the earth and will delight themselves in abundant peace." Oh, I'm sorry. Uh, the humble will at last inherit the land and delight themselves in abundant prosperity and peace. So if you want to delight yourself in abundant prosperity, if you want to delight yourself in abundant peace, humble yourself. Constantly ask yourself, how can I humble myself under God? How can I submit myself to God? And what areas am I not submitting to God? Is it with my time? Is it with my finances? Is it with my relationships? Like, what are the ways that I am not submitting to God? And how can I change that? Because I'll tell you, like, as soon as you open another door to God in your heart and you say, I'm going to let you into this corner of my heart. I'm going to let you into this corner of my heart. It's all of a sudden, it's just leaps and bounds, the explosion that you'll see, the growth in your life from making Him, from making Him first and submitting under Him and allowing Him into every part of your life and giving Him the power and submitting under Him. So it is a discipline. It's a choice. It's hard. It takes courage, but that is what it takes. So discipline yourselves to be like that tree planted by the river. Stay in the presence of God, abide in Him, and let His words abide in you. And then you can ask what you will, and it'll be done for you. So that's it from me. I want to hear some of your guys' thoughts. You guys feel free to just jump in. Go ahead and unmute yourselves.
I like those verses. If you could send them after the meeting's over. That was pretty good.
Yeah,
I,
absolutely.
I like what you said about, the that verse. What was that verse? The tree's not worried about, times of was it a verse or was it where it said the tree was not worried about, times of famine or anything like that? Um, I like that a lot. I don't
Yeah.
know.
So I think we're at Psalms chapter 1 with that one. And I'll just turn back over there. Uh, so it says, "Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of the sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law does he meditate day and night. For he will be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth fruit in his season, and his leaf shall not wither, and whatsoever he does will prosper." And I'll read it in the Amplified Version too. It says, "He'll be like a tree planted by the streams of water, which yields fruit in its season. Its leaf doesn't wither, and whatever he does prospers." And then in Jeremiah 17, it also says he'll be nourished like a tree planted by the waters, that spreads its roots by the river and will not fear the heat when it comes, and its leaves will be green and moist, and it won't be anxious or concerned in the year of drought, and it will not stop bearing fruit. So both of those really talk about it.
Well, I know, a lot of people, if you look around, might feel like they're either in a season of famine, or we could be going towards one, however they feel. But it's very reassuring that, just stay close to the source and you don't really have to worry about whatever may happen in, the world around you or the economy around you or even your business or, the field that you work in or anything like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to lay another hard truth on you. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. So if you think that the economy is bad and that you're going to be struggling, then guess what, buddy? You just you just bought yourself a whole lot of struggle. So we can't allow circumstances and situations, the storms on the outside to affect us on the inside. We need to be able to be plugged into God because you can't read the word and not be encouraged. And you have to find verses that will encourage you and lift you up. And if you start getting over into fear, because that's what it is people just live in a perpetual state of fear. They're afraid of their own shadow. They're afraid if they go out, they're going to get sick. They're afraid that if this new president takes over, then all of a sudden the economy is going to go to crap, or that World War III is going to start, or whatever. And it's like these people just fear is false evidence appearing, or false evidence appearing real. And fear is just it's a mind game that the devil tries to play. He tries to get in our heads and get us to be afraid, and we're going to have whatever we say. So what happens is people, they start thinking these thoughts, and then they start speaking these things, and then all of a sudden maybe we're not in World War III, but they're in World War III in their heads, and they're just living in fear. And the fear is like the devil's number one tool to attack us. And we can't be moved by the way that circumstances appear in situations. As we think in our hearts, so is he. So if we can just think, I'm blessed, I'm favored, God is moving, working all things together for good for those who love him. He's removing the obstacles that block our path. If we delight ourselves in him, he's going to give us the desires of our heart. That doesn't have any bearing on the economy. If you look at countless examples in the Old Testament of during famine, the fathers of our faith, they were prospering, they were blessed, and they were living in abundance despite those famines. And I will add too that, typically what happens is people get afraid, and then they stop doing the things that led them into prosperity. They stop sowing.
Mm.
Man, some great verses, man. I totally agree with it. And stand strong, man, because faith comes by hearing and hearing of the word. This is why we got to constantly read the word and ask for a better understanding of it. Because it points out that that when, as long as we do our work, which our work um is one of the biggest ones is sowing, and I think sowing time is the biggest one.
Yes.
And whichever way there's many ways you can sow time. So whether it's worshiping, praising, reading the word, whether it's out there outreaching, whether it's fellowshipping, there's many ways you can sow your time. And as long as you're surrounded with the word, through those trials and tribulations, you get understanding that we grow perseverance. And then his timing is perfect. So this is why we have to sow, because there's a season when you sow, and then a season when you reap. So it's never on our time. Once we understand that his timing is perfect, um, it's crucial in life, man. And that's what I've been asking the Lord every second is every time I spend time with him is help me decrease in order for him to increase. More of him and less of me.
Wow.
Because he just fills me up and he gives me the understanding that we living in the earth. So of course we're gonna face these trials and tribulations, but the word says rest our worries onto him. He'll make a way. He is the light at the end of the tunnel, you know. He would never forsake us or abandon us. So this is why it's so crucial to sow your time into reading the word, and then to, like you said, even worshiping, like even having it in the background. It just changes the day, changes the mood. Waking up to him, praising him, worshiping him will set the tone of the day, and it's crucial, man. Those verses hit hard, man. Definitely take him with me because he is a source, and without him, we become weak. When we not spending time with him, it allows time for the adversary to work in us. That's why we got to constantly seek him.
Yeah, amen, dude. I mean, if you're not facing adversity, then you're just simply not going hard enough. If you're just coasting along, then you're not going hard enough. I mean, that's at least that's the way that I look at it, and I know that this has been confirmed by, a lot of my spiritual mentors is that, once you're moving forward into the direction that God has for you, there's going to be spiritual oppositions. There's going to be people that are trying to come against you. There's going to be demonic attacks. And if you're not having demonic attacks, then you must not be making waves in the spirit. So we need to be making waves in the spirit realm, and we need to be moving towards righteousness, and we need to be moving towards building God's kingdom. And it's going to come at a cost, it's not going to be easy, but he's going to keep in perfect peace those whose mind is stayed on him. And if we just rely on him, trust in him, not rely on ourselves. And in Philippians chapter 4, it talks about the peace that passes all understanding. We don't have to understand why we're in peace in every circumstance and situation. The faith takes over, and that's what allows us to enter into the rest. And dude, I love what you said, Sandy, because it's so true.
Yeah, man. Uh, I love the talk tonight. Um, yeah, just his peace. Um, it's so evident. It's so true. Your mind's not on the Lord that you know things start to go wrong. Then you're like, oh wait, when was the last time I gave time to Jesus and stuff? And yeah, it's just crazy how true it is, and you can actually see it in like real time. Like it's so it's just like another one of those things where like talks about it in the word and then you see it happen and it's like that's like it's alive. Like Jesus is alive, his word is alive, his word is everlasting. um so yeah, man, I just love the verses.
Yeah, I mean, it's like what are we holding back? Like I feel like, Sandy, to your point, there's a seed of our time that we sow to the things of God. And it's like if we don't sow that seed, like there's such a thing as the DNA of the seed. So if you're sowing a seed of your time, you're going to reap a harvest of your time. If you're sowing, of your finances, you're going to reap a harvest of your finances. If you're sowing love, you're going to reap love. We have to sow the things that we are believing for. We have to sow the things that we want to see a harvest of. And we get caught up in our own stuff. And then all of a sudden we say, my stuff's more important. I don't actually have time to give God love and to develop my relationship with him today because I have so many things going on. And it's like none of those things are more important. It's like once we come to the place where we make a decision that there is nothing that is more important than getting into the presence of God, getting into the word of God, and developing our relationship with God, then all of a sudden we'll realize that really nothing else does matter. That phone call that we thought was so important can wait. That work project that we have can wait. You know, everything can wait. And that was something that was a real unlock for me when I realized that, you know what, it can wait. There's really nothing that is that important. And sometimes people constantly have a demand for your attention and they have a demand for things. And it's really like arbitrary. It's like just because somebody wants something right now doesn't necessarily mean that it really needs to be right now. But making a priority of the things of God and saying my relationship with God is the most important thing. Therefore, I will put God first in everything that I do and the way that I conduct myself and the way that I live my life. Then all of a sudden, everything else falls into place underneath of it. You'd be surprised. Like it amazes me, how I'll have 1,001 fires burning and then I'll step back and I'll get into the presence of God for 10, 15, 20 minutes and then all of a sudden, things will just start getting resolved while I've separated myself, while I've thrown my phone away into the other room so that I can just separate myself to God for a little bit. And I'll come back and things will have been resolved as I was going because God honors that seed. And it's just so crucial for us. But we have to get out of our own way and just say, you know what? It can wait. It can wait. It can wait. Just when we submit under God, then He exalts us at the appointed time. But when we exalt ourselves, when we put our stuff in front of his stuff, then we're not really being faithful with what we've been given. And then we can't really expect to get more because we haven't been faithful with what we have been allotted. And there's nothing that is more true than time. If we're not faithful with the time that we have, it doesn't matter if we had more time, we would squander it the same way. And the same is true of finances. If we're not faithful with the the little finances that we have now, how can we expect to have things change if you added a zero to our income? Like we're just going to treat it the same way. So these are the thoughts that I have. But I've really been putting a major emphasis lately on trying to open the doors to my heart to God in ways that maybe before I was unwilling or unable to. And there's just breakthroughs that happen when you do that. And it's like, what are we withholding? There's a verse in Haggai that says, is the seed still in the barn? You know, and don't let your seed grow stale sitting in the barn. Get your seed in the ground, the seed of your time, the seed of love, the seed of your finances. There's everything is a seed.
I've been adding this verse into my daily declarations, where man, where is it? I don't have the exact um I'm just gonna get it. Um oh yeah, of course it's in Isaiah. It's surely the arm of the Lord is not too short to save, nor his ear too dull to hear. And I like to remind myself of that anytime there's a situation where I'm like, well, this is a difficult situation and I don't think I can handle it, or I'm not sure that, whenever it's something that just seems like it's, way outside of what I can handle, or if it's direction from God, then I'm just not sure that I'm able to fulfill. I like to, remind myself of that verse because it's almost like, you're questioning the authority of God and the faith that you have in God. That if you're like, okay, well, God is big, but this problem is just too big, and I'm not going to put my faith in it. Without faith, it's impossible to please God. So I feel like it's those situations where rather than stepping back and saying, okay, well, I'll let it sort itself out. Those are the situations that we need to be really stepping up and putting our faith on, because those are the situations that's going to enable our faith to grow, and it's going to enable, both God, not only, God will be pleased by our faith, but also, it's going to unlock new opportunities for, like taking our faith to the next level. And I know a lot of people, it's easy to have that cursory level faith that, okay, yeah, God wants me to succeed, and God works all things together for good, and God, loves me. And, that's beginner basic level faith, but we gotta take our faith to the next level where it's like, okay, you know, God's arm is not too short, if there's something else that we need to believe him for over a situation, let's we put our money where our mouth is, put our faith where our mouth is, let's start believing for actual big things instead of just, you know, the beginner entry level faith.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
You ever like start saying a sentence and then by the end of the sentence it was completely different from what you intended to say when you started the sentence?
Yes.
But yeah, that was, it all rings true. I need to get off. I'm on this social media, I'm on it still. I need to get off all the social media, but I just see so much negativity. And I'm not going to talk, about politics because I'm not, thrilled with a lot of things that I see, but even just general consensus about the economy, like, oh my gosh, everything is so expensive, never going to be able to buy a house, never going to be able to move upwards in our field. Even like, I follow this forum for people in architecture, right? And they're all, all day long, how do you make money in this field? Like it's hard to succeed, how can we, leave this field and do other things, how are you guys making it? We're all starving in this field, and I'm just like, dude, I don't need this negativity. Like, I'm not even graduated and God has blessed me and I'm succeeding, abundantly. So I need to stop subjecting myself and listening to, the negativity. There's if God, what's one of those other verses in my declarations is, everything I put my hand to shall prosper. And I've said it before, and I do agree that it's true. If God's not with you, it's not going to be as prospered, as or as blessed as something that God wants you to do. But at the same time, I'm keeping that in my declarations that, it doesn't matter if this is exactly, the perfect thing that I should be spending every second or my mind right now, but everything that I put my hand to shall prosper. Like Abraham, for example. You think God cared that Abraham had thousands of goats, or cows or anything like that, whether Abraham was a farmer or a shepherd? God probably didn't care because he knew at the end of the day, Abraham's calling had nothing to do with, his herding or his digging of the wells or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It was his relationship with him. And if Abraham's relationship with God and with, leading his family with God was in line, then everything else, God was willing to bless Abraham in. Like Abraham wasn't a warrior, but there were a couple times. There was that time where he went to war. That was, I don't know if that's the only time, but it's one of the only times we ever see Abraham go to war. And it's not like he trained their whole lives, to be a warrior. But like that one time, he's like, I gotta go save my nephew. He put his hand to it, and God was with him, and God prospered him in that area as well. Even I think he dug a lot of wells, and I'm sure God prospered him in that. So in all these areas, if you're abiding with God, and you're having that relationship with him, that's what's most important. And at the end of the day, if that's in order, then God will prosper you in every other area. That's not to say that he doesn't have a perfect, the best job and the best path for you. But, all that stuff comes second to, that relationship with God and being able to listen to him and follow his direction. And that's something that for myself, I definitely need to be able to get back into, where I'm communing very often and able to hear clearly about his direction and having that, that relationship. You have reached the recording limit, huh?
Who said that?
Otter pilot.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Otter can't hang.
I've been praying about, the next season, what we're gonna do after we get married. And I definitely need some clear direction from God on that because part of me, I'm satisfied, I'm happy here. I'm not rushing to move back to Tampa, but on the other hand, I'm also, Pastor Kevin is very strong, and he's I believe God's gonna bless him with long life and abundance, and strength even in his old age. But I don't want to miss out on the time that I could spend with him, using him as a mentor and learning what I can from him, being around in that, environment. Uh, then on the other hand, my fiance doesn't want to leave too far, doesn't want to leave her mom, alone just yet, which I understand, but definitely need wisdom and peace over that situation, that God will give us both the same word of direction, that we'll both be in agreement about it. And, I thought it'd be cool to go on for a master's, but I'm also, wondering, if that's not what God has for me, like I'll be able to get licensed either way, at the end of the day, that next step is like it's cool, but it's a 3 year commitment of, not being able of that being like almost my number one priority. And it's like at that point, is that going to further my career, spending 3 years to get, another degree that's not necessarily going to open up a whole lot more doors? Or should I just, finish where I'm at this year and, you know, well, 3 years, God can do a lot in a couple months. If, 3 years of me being able to just focus on him and not being worried about, going to classes or anything like that. So I have a lot of different things that are, I'm praying about and I'm trying to figure out where this next step is. And a lot of those decisions are decisions that I need to make within the next few months. So be praying about me for that if you guys can.
Yeah, absolutely, bro. And the more you seek him, the more you find him, man, the more you are found by him. So if you just stay faithful to him and keep pressing in, he's gonna he's gonna give you that path.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And just between us, I'm trying to have a little bit of patience because my fiance is like, I don't want to leave, my mom right now and, leave her all alone. And like, I haven't said this, but on the inside, I'm like, dude, this is a 40-year-old woman, that honestly needs to learn to fend for herself. And we're not recording, right? Yeah. Like, needs to fend for herself. And at the same time, like, you know, my dad, our dad's, 75 years old, I would like to, use these next, I don't know, like I said,